starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, and good afternoon, everybody. This is Gillian Degan. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer with ABC Research Laboratories. I'm glad that you joined us today for our menu labeling seminar. As you can see, it's called Menu Labeling, Your Questions Answered. What I'm going to try to do today is go ahead and give you a good, quick overview of the pending regulations for menu labeling and kind of run through what the restaurant chains and associated companies are facing, and then kind of talk about a little bit of how you can provide good, accurate data to the public when need be, and answer any questions that the audience has. I also want you to be aware that there is the ability to raise your hand in a webinar, and to do that, there's a little button that's on your dashboard. It looks like a little hand waving. You can always wave your hand, and it'll pop up a window on my side, and I can answer whatever questions you have there. So a little background on ABC Research. We are a ISO accredited 17025 testing laboratory. We're in Gainesville, Florida. We work with a variety of different types of foods, beverages, and a little bit of non-food products as well. Nutritional analysis and nutritional labeling, that's one of our core competencies. It's a very, very large part of our business, and it has been since the inception of the company in 1967. You can always find us online at abcr.com. We also have a social media presence, so if you like to look around on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, we're on those as well, and I'll be giving you the keywords for those at the end of today's webinar. So usually for these webinars, I'm joined by Lori Stevens. She is our Business Development Director that heads up restaurants, hospitality, and food service. Lori is actually at a National Restaurant Association QA study group in Tennessee this week, so she will not be on the call today, but her contact information, you can get that from our website, and I believe we'll be sending out an email with both her and my contact information after the webinar, so any questions that you don't think of today, we can always address later. All right, so an overview of what we're going to be talking about today are the regulations that we're all waiting to see come out from the FDA. As part of the Affordable Care Act earlier this year, the President signed into law many different parts of the Affordable Care Act. The one that we're going to talk about today is Section 4205, and that's menu labeling for restaurant chains. The restaurant chains that this would affect would be folks that have 20 or more locations under a same or similar name, and the rule is delineating that calorie counts be given on menus, menu boards, that even means like a drive-through menu, and that additional nutritional information be available for customers to avail themselves of prior to the point of purchase. So again, establishments covered, restaurants with 20 or more locations, folks that have concession stands at movie theaters or bowling alleys, they will be exempt. The idea behind that exemption is that the main purpose for the exemption is that that's not their main business driver. They're there. They're there as a bowling alley. They're not there as a restaurant chain, so they're exempt. Again, what you'll need is the calories next to the entree or side dish or menu item on your menu. That means menus, menu boards, drive-through menus. You also will have to put a statement about daily caloric intake. That the FDA has a couple of options of what you can use, but that also has to be on your standard menus as well. Basics for the proposed rule, calorie posting for self-service and food on display. So that means items that somebody may order off a menu. It also means items like at a deli that somebody may choose out of a cold case. And because this covers all food sold by restaurants, food is going to be considered misbranded by FDA standards if it's not the calorie count and additional nutritional information is not given. There are two ways pretty much to get in trouble with the FDA. One is misbranding, the other one is adulteration. And misbranding just means that you're not giving the consumer all of the appropriate and necessary information, or you're giving misleading information at the point of sale. Again, standard menu items would include anything that's listed or offered for consumption on the menu, self-service food like a buffet, or food on display. And this, if you start thinking about somebody who has a unique offering like a Subway restaurant chain or a pizza chain, there may be a million varieties of pizzas out there just because of all the different toppings. But if specifically on the menu you do list certain pizzas like a barbecue or a deluxe or a supreme, those are considered distinct menu items and would have to be labeled as such. Some other items that the FDA touches on in the proposed rule are the definition of what a combination meal is, variable menu item, self-serve food, custom order, daily specials. What you'll see is a list of items. Obviously, you can have a very large list of items on your menu. However, you still can do market tests. So anything under 60 non-consecutive days on a menu or less than 90 days on a menu for a market test. So it does give you some leeway in there to have limited time offers, to do some market research and see what types of things you want to offer as far as that goes. The options for listing information for custom orders and combination meals, we can touch on those because this is still a proposed rule and we're waiting for the final regulations to come out later this year. We can talk about how those look in a proposed rule. The FDA gave many options of either putting ranges of values for the calories or listing dishes that have a similar caloric content together. So maybe, hey, all of these dishes are under, between 550 and 600 calories. So there are definitely options on how you can list menu items that way as well. And when we're talking about listing these, the caloric declaration, we're talking about calories being listed again on the menu right next to the item, up to and including 50 calories at 5 calorie increments, and the closest 10 calorie increments for anything above 50 calories. And again, lots of different options for combination meals and variable menu items. I'm going to pause the presentation just for a second to make sure that I have a slide in here that I think is going to interest you guys. 1 second. Okay, thanks for bearing with me. You should be able to see my screen again. I apologize for that. Okay, this is one I wanted to make sure was there. Additional information available to consumers. Again, you're going to have those calories posted next to the menu item on your menus, menu boards, drive-thrus. Also, you will have to be able to provide additional information such as calories from fat, total fat, saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, sodium content, total carbohydrates, dietary fiber, sugars, and protein. And this is it's a pretty long list, and as you can see, it very much mirrors what we're used to seeing on the back panel of a retail food item. So if you go into a grocery store and pick up a food item and you're looking at that nutritional facts panel, this is pretty much everything that's included there except for vitamins and minerals. So it's a fairly comprehensive description of the nutritional content of the food. And as you can imagine, it's a lot of work to get all of these values together for every single menu item. I think what a lot of folks, what surprises them when they start looking at their menu, because they know because of having enough locations they're going to be affected by this, you think about discrete menu items, but then you don't realize how many combinations therein there can be. So it is a significant undertaking for a restaurant to go ahead and gather and put this data out there. Okay, so I talked a little bit about pizzas as an example of a menu item where there could be a variety of different variables and toppings, and again, a million different combinations. So some ways to attack that, and it's going to be interesting to see what the final ruling is go ahead and looking at a basic preparation of a menu item, and then giving the caloric declaration for that, the basic preparation. So in this example, we consider it a cheese pizza. And then going ahead and saying, okay, all of these different toppings, if you add green peppers, if you add pepperoni, if you add sausage, all of these different toppings have their own caloric value that would add, depending on how many, do you want double cheese, do you want single cheese, how many different types of toppings you would add onto that pizza. And again, items with similar nutrient makeup can be listed as a group. That was another option the FDA gave. And you may be asking yourself, why are the different options? Well, a couple of reasons. Because this is a proposed rule, the FDA gives multiple options and then asks for comment on these options before they put out their final rule. But even in the final rule, we will probably see several different options for compliance. And that being said, every restaurant chain is different. Different menu items need to be handled differently, and especially the ability to list items with a similar nutrient makeup together can be a real space saver on a menu. You're going to have to get menus reprinted. Think about a drive-through menu board. There really isn't a lot of extra space on a drive-through menu. Or even some restaurants, like imagine a coffee shop. Walking up to a coffee shop, there isn't a lot of extra space on that walk-up menu board. You already have, your menu items listed, you have the prices, and it could be a little bit of an eye chart putting up another caloric value for every combination possible. So the FDA is trying to give people different options for compliance. Okay, just to briefly touch on self-service and buffet food and food on display. This again is an option that the FDA proposed in the rule, is either being able to put the calories per item or per serving. So take, for instance, if there were chicken nuggets on a buffet. You don't really know how many chicken nuggets the average person is going to pick up. So FDA is giving you the option to either list the calories per item, so saying one chicken nugget is 75 calories, or you could say we consider 3 chicken nuggets, 1 serving, and I'm going to put 75 times 3 up for my serving of calories. So if it's distinct pieces, something like a chicken nugget where somebody may only put up 1, obviously probably want to avail yourself of putting up the calories per item, but you do have that leeway there for buffet food and food on display. Another avenue to consider if you have multi-serving items, if you're selling a rotisserie chicken, obviously that's meant to feed hopefully more than one person. You could display the total calories, but you could also give additional information of calories per serving. So again, giving the consumer a little bit more information to use in their purchase decision, but also hopefully representing, what you're selling to the customer at a more reasonable rate in a per serving calorie count. Okay, so there are 2 different ways to go ahead and get this information on all of your menu items. There's nutrient databases and there's laboratory analysis. Those are the 2 main ones. As far as using a database, ABC Research actually uses both techniques to get nutritional information. Databases use the formulation or the recipe for the product to calculate nutritional values. When we advise a client, we suggest that they only use database analysis for items like salads or sandwiches. As you can imagine, those items are a direct reflection of their recipes. If I know on a per weight basis that I have these 8 items and I mix them all together to make my salad, that salad is going to mirror that recipe in a very, very, very perfect way. Same thing with a sandwich. If I know that I have certain amounts of certain ingredients that I'm putting together in that sandwich and there's no cooking, there's no moisture loss there, I know that that sandwich is very well represented by a database analysis for nutritional purposes. Database analysis is a quick and easy and inexpensive way to do it, and we try to maximize that for our clients. In the cases where we have food items that either undergo a significant cooking during their creation, or you know, are coming out of a deep fat fryer, we definitely do tell people to use a laboratory analysis for those. As you can imagine, laboratory analysis gives the most accurate portrayal of all of the nutritional aspects of a food, because we actually have the food in our possession and we do a chemical extraction of the fat and quantify that. We chemically extract the dietary fiber and quantify that. That's how we get all the different pieces of that nutritional facts panel. You know, this very much takes into account not only the ingredients in the food, but also any changes that the food may have undergone during its preparation. One of the best examples of kind of when should you use a database, when should you use a laboratory analysis, is hash browns. If I was going to make hash browns on a flat top grill, let's say I have a breakfast restaurant, I'm going to take my ladle and ladle out some oil onto my flat top grill, take my shredded potatoes and maybe some onions, salt and pepper, go ahead and throw those down, let them go ahead and saute up, maybe flip them a couple times, onto the spatula, and it goes onto the plate and it's off to the guest. Well, if I looked at the recipe for that, I would have that entire ladle of oil, I would have my potatoes, my onion, my salt and pepper, but is that really what the guest is getting on their plate? I think all of us can agree that there is a significant portion of oil that is left on that flat top griddle. That full ladle of oil is not getting absorbed completely by the potatoes. And I could say wholeheartedly that as a restaurateur, I would not want my calorie count to be artificially high because there's oil left on my grill. I would like to have that item done by a full analysis, full laboratory analysis. Another good example, you have chicken wings and you're going to toss those chicken wings in a buffalo sauce. I may put 10 wings in a bowl, pour 2 ounces of sauce in the bowl, toss them up, go ahead and portion those wings into my basket, and off it goes to my customer in my sports bar. What's left in that bowl? Probably a significant portion of that 2 ounces of sauce. The pickup on that sauce is not going to be 100%. And if done by a recipe analysis, a database, we're going to take into account that all of that sauce is consumed, and that's not necessarily the case. So depending on the type and the preparation of the food item, sometimes you can get higher calorie counts, sometimes you can get higher sodium counts, and just looking at the preparation of the item and being properly advised of what type of analysis to do, you can really save yourself some headaches in the end. All right, so expected compliance. We've talked about, you know, this guidance is going to come out towards the end of the year. Everybody's going to be expected to comply that has 20 or more locations. So what does the FDA expect as far as accuracy, as far as just true compliance, getting all of your information together and having it ready when that due date arrives? As you can see, they want calorie counts, and then they want all of that additional nutritional information to be available if requested. So it's really similar to what retail products are expected to provide in the marketplace. Likewise, the wiggle room pretty much that the FDA gives retail products is usually about a plus or minus 20% on a value. So for your calorie value, for your sodium value, for your protein value, you can be plus or minus 20% off of, let's say, what's really in the product. So let's say the FDA decides to spot check you. If you're within that tolerance, they're absolutely fine with that. Now, it is a really big concern in restaurants that the restaurant food is much more variable than a mass-produced retail product. We all know if you've worked in a restaurant, man, that is certainly the case. So we actually have some tips and tricks that we advise our clients on how to kind of mitigate that risk and how to develop a sampling plan where it's a very strong sampling plan. You've done all that you possibly can to say, hey, look, I've sampled enough product that even though there's variability in my menu items, I've really tried to minimize that as much as possible. We like to do this because, number one, we want to give our clients accurate data. Number two, when you do have to answer a call or an email from an FDA officer questioning some of your data, you want to be able to say you did it right from the get-go. So we actually have another webinar. I have information of it at the end of this one. That's all about risk mitigation and how to set up your sampling plan so you have very, very robust data. And I'll give you the information for that at the end as well. But again, expected compliance, if it's anything like retail, it's going to be plus or minus 20%, and there will be a due date and period of implementation where FDA is going to expect that everybody is complying after a certain date. People do have questions on, you know, how long are we going to have before we have to have all of this information ready, and we have to have, you know, our menus reprinted and our menu boards redone, all of that. In the proposed rule, we see a period of 6 months. I know that, at least in my opinion, I think that's incredibly short. This is a very big project to undertake. And 6 months is not a lot of time for any restaurateur. The National Restaurant Association has been lobbying hard with the FDA to get that extended to 12 months. So it'll be interesting to see what the implementation period is, but keep in mind the FDA started at 6 months, and sometimes, as we all know, things with the FDA can be non-negotiable. All right, so as far as looking for help when you're talking about this undertaking, kind of what questions should I ask when I'm looking for somebody to help me get my nutritional information? Again, accuracy. What kind of systems does that provider have in place to make sure the numbers that they're giving you are correct? As far as we're concerned, we have a 17025 accreditation, which means we're a lab who is audited by an independent auditor. We have reams upon reams of paperwork and QA programs in place to make sure that we perform our analyses correctly, and we have data that can stand up in court. That's always a good place to start with folks when you're talking about any kind of scientific endeavor. What kind of quality assurance systems do you have in place? And then again, probably the question that I get asked most often is, what if somebody questions my nutritional values? What type of support can I get after the fact? You know, and whether that someone is the FDA coming in and looking at your values and questioning them, whether, God forbid, it's Diane Sawyer on the ABC Evening News who has gone and secret shopped you and run additional nutritional testing on one entree that they picked up at one store of yours in the U.S. There are definitely going to be people out there that are looking at the data and comparing it, and just to see how accurate it is. A firm that is worth their salt is going to support a client in that situation, and I mean support by proper sampling plans from the very, very beginning, robust analysis, and then if it comes to that, expert testimony, and all of that. It's nice to be able to give the public information, but it's also very, very scary for a business owner to put information out there, because the first thing happens is it gets questioned. So there's a lot of brand integrity on the line. We understand that, and we definitely support our clients wholeheartedly through the entire process. So if they get questions, there's a plan in place. They know how to react, and they can just go on from there. All right, as far as, I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how we would start this process. If somebody comes to us, they have a full menu that they need done, we will go ahead and we'll look through that menu. We'll identify which samples can be done first by a database analysis. So we're looking for the simple items, the salads, the sandwiches, the things that are very easily represented and mirror their formulations. And we're going to go ahead and request 100-gram unrounded nutritional data from your suppliers. It kind of sounds strange, but we want the unrounded data because obviously in a nutritional analysis, the FDA does allow rounding, and you can round down. So let's say I have 0.25 grams of fat in a serving. Well, I'm allowed to round that down to 0. Well, that's only in one serving. What if my recipe calls for 20 of that? Now I'm up to 5 grams of fat. So as you can see, we want to see every bit of information that your suppliers have so we know that we're giving you an accurate portrayal at the end. I always ask the question, is 0 grams of fat really 0? Is that a 0 or is that a rounded down value? That's just one of the ways that we kind of strengthen our data is by starting with the utmost data from your suppliers. And then again, we would complete the database items, do as many things by database as we can because it's definitely a cost savings. And then the menu items that we suggest you run by a full lab analysis to avoid, you know, a calorie count that's too high, a sodium value that's artificially high. We would actually go through, depending on the size of your menu items, we would suggest different sampling plans and different compositing plans to go ahead and minimize the amount of variability that one may see in their menu items. And then we go ahead and get those menu items either sent to us or we will go to one of your retail establishments and pick them up, depending on how you want to handle it. And then we would do all of the lab analysis for those items. What you would get back in the end as a client would be just what you need. Calorie counts per menu item, and then all of those associated, you know, the protein, the fat, the trans fat, the sodium, the cholesterol, all of those additional menu items that you have to provide to a guest upon request. We remit those values in a variety of different forms. It just depends on what is going to work best for you, the client. All right, so today we kind of talked about what we've seen thus far in the proposed rule, which gives us a great idea of what the final rule is going to look like. Again, we do have a more in-depth webinar that goes into a little bit more detail on the proposed rule. We also have another webinar that talks about risk mitigation and how it's a scary thing to put all of this information out there and how, you know, what can you do as far as your due diligence during this process to really safeguard your good name as a company. You can find those on our website. If you like to do social media stuff, we are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, we have a blog, and we are on LinkedIn. Probably the easiest place to go would be to our blog. You have the hyperlink right there on the screen. On there you will find, you can download some white papers about nutritional labeling as well. And then there are other webinars you can go on and check out as well. So please avail yourselves of those resources. Another good reason to kind of link up with us on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, as we see different updates from the National Restaurant Association, as we see different updates from the FDA, and when that final rule comes out, that's how we're going to update the majority of our clients, is through these social media. So you're linked to us, and you're going to get any new news pushed out to you immediately. And we just feel like it's a good and efficient way to share information, and it's information where we read the full FDA document and we will break it down for you in a usable kind of Cliff Notes version versus just giving you a link to the FDA website, because not everybody speaks FDA. So let me see if we have any questions for today specifically. Give me 1 second to check on my side. Oh, and just to let you guys know, my marketing manager, Chuck Ellis, has put a poll that's open. I think you guys can see it on that sidebar for GoToWebinar. And then there's also a chat area where Chuck has given you some links to the Menu Labeling Resource Center. So that's that part of our website that has all the good information for you guys and the downloadable content. So it's free. Check it out. It's good information. And again, go ahead and write in your questions. And if you guys go on there, download some of the content and have questions later, you can always contact me or Lori Stevens directly. So, all right, let's go ahead and answer our first question on here. Okay, the question is about, actually our ISO accreditation. I did mention that we're a 17025 accredited lab. Kind of what does that mean? That means that we are, it's the highest ISO that you can have as a testing lab. It means that we have quality assurance programs in place and that we're audited at least every other year by an independent auditor to make sure that what we're doing is right. And it's an easy thing to say. It's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort on our parts. That means that most of our analysis is run at a minimum in duplicate, if not more. That we have check samples, we have proficiency tests that we have to pass to show that our technicians are properly trained. It's just one of the ways where we can show that we know what we're doing, and it's a good thing to ask for in a service provider and to make sure that all of the tests that they're going to be running for you are under their ISO accreditation. So it's just a nice thing to be able to ask a lab, and it's documentation that you can kind of have in your back pocket that if somebody does question your data at a certain point, you can say, look, I did my utmost in having an ISO accredited lab run the analysis for me. And here's all of my paperwork to back that up. So, all right, another question we have. How does FDA define a serving size for a multi-serving food item? Does that refer back to the CFR serving size, or do we as a restaurant determine the serving size? That is a great question. So to give a little bit of background, for retail products, the FDA in the Code of Federal Regulations actually gives recommended serving sizes. They're called rack values for different items. You know, a sauce or a salad dressing might have a 2-ounce rack value, or a raw fish serving for sashimi may have a 3.5-ounce rack value. So a slice of bread has it has to be one whole slice. You can't, you know, put out the serving size of a slice of bread and say, well, my bread's special and it's only half a slice. So what these rack values do for retail foods is they ensure consistency across the line. So as a consumer, you know that if you're in the bread aisle, everything is one slice, and you can compare apples to apples, truly. The question that our audience member poses, how does the FDA define a serving size, and does it relate back to the CFR, and I'm assuming the rack values, or do the restaurant chains get to pick that? That is something that they did not well define in the proposed rule. As you can imagine, if you have a family-style restaurant and you do have those multi-serving portions, or let's even take for an example, an appetizer, where the appetizer is probably meant to be shared between 4 to 6 people, let's say. In that case, what we have advised folks to do is to go ahead and kind of treat that like a buffet item, in the sense that get a calorie count for the entire plate of food, the entire appetizer. But let's say if it comes in distinct pieces, maybe it's bruschetta where there are 6 pieces with toppings. If there's anything about it that gives kind of distinct portions, also have us do the serving size as a distinct portion. So if it's 6 slices of bread with toppings to make a bruschetta appetizer, let's go ahead. We're going to do the analysis. We're going to calculate the calories for the full plate, and then let's go ahead and also have it per distinct piece. I have a feeling that FDA is going to allow both calorie counts to be published. If not, I think we will probably see them allow you to publish the calorie count for the entire plate, and then say, you know, to be shared by 5 people, and then maybe put another calorie count for the individual thing. It was not completely defined in the proposed rule. It will have to be defined in the final regulation. That is probably one of the most common questions I've had. I don't think they're going to be able to use the rack values from the CFR, only because the rack values in most cases are a distinct food and not really a dish. Most of them are salad dressing or fish, but it's not a breaded fish fillet with, you know, cocktail sauce on top or tartar sauce on top. That would be kind of the combination of 2 or 3 rack values, let's say. So I don't think the FDA is going to be able to relate back to the rack values. I do think they're going to have to allow some interpretation on the restaurant's part as to what constitutes a serving in a dish. Okay, other questions? Okay, I have a question. What is the average timeline or timetable for completing a full menu analysis? That's also another good question. So we talked a little bit about the possible 6-month implementation period that the FDA is pushing for. NRA is pushing for 12 months. How long does it really take to get this done? I actually go through this in detail in the risk mitigation webinar, and the long and the short of it is I suggest people start now. The final rule is not out, but take the time now to go through your menu, really determine how many unique menu items you have. Find some service providers, start comparing them, see who you feel comfortable using. So when you're ready to go, you're ready to go. Because usually doing an entire menu analysis, and I mean from the first time we see that menu till the last bit of data is given back to our client, depending on how cooperative your suppliers are about giving up that 100-gram nutritional information, it could be a few weeks, or depending on how much digging we have to do with the suppliers, it can stretch out significantly longer than that. I also warn people, you know, this is a lot of work. To gather all of this information is a lot of work. You want to make sure you dot all your I's and cross all your T's, but also even after you have all this information, you may want to reformulate some menu items. You may want to change how big that appetizer is because the calorie count is just too scary to put on your menu. And secondarily, even if you're happy with all of your calorie counts, you're ready to go, you still have to reformat and reprint menus. You have to figure out where in the world you're going to have enough menu or enough space on your menu board, you know, if it's a walk-up menu or a drive-through menu. Just the logistics of being able to have all of that information available and fit it onto the existing real estate that you have to work with, that takes a lot. And then lastly, I've got my menus, you know, reprinted. I have my menu boards done. I'm ready to go. I should probably think about training my staff to answer questions about the nutritional information that I'm giving out, because you give out information and a guest is always going to have a question. So I like to tell people, think about all of those things in that timeline. They take a lot of time, and 6 months is not a lot of time. So there's a lot of work that can be done now before the final rule is out. And I'm a very big proponent of working early and being prepared. Because as you can imagine, if everybody's waiting to the last moment to do this, there are a lot of restaurant chains that have more than 20 locations, and this is it's a very specific, food science is kind of a very specific sector of science. There are a limited number of service providers out there, and we're all going to be very, very busy, and we want to make sure that we have enough time to devote to each client. All right, let me see if there are any other questions. All right, I don't see other questions for right now. Again, please go to our website, check out the white papers, check out the downloadable content. Some of the white papers, if you have to take this information back and present it to your boss or a higher up in your company, the white paper may be very useful for you as far as explaining, like, this is the long and the short of what we're going to be facing. This is how much work it takes, all of that. It's some very good literature that I think usually helps people kind of make their case for budgeting time and budgeting money for a project of this size. So our next webinar is October 18th, so a week from today, again at 2:30 Eastern. And we will be talking about, I think we'll be giving another update after our folks come back from this NRA symposium. I'm excited to see kind of what updates they got from the National Restaurant Association and share them with the group. And again, answer any questions that may come up. So please feel free, go to our website, email us, call us. We're definitely here to help. And again, I don't see any new questions popping up, so I'd like to wish everybody a wonderful afternoon and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks for attending. Bye-bye.